Here is a list of the F1 records that you could beat. 1. Only driver to score 0 points in a season their teammate won the championship. Dave Walker, 1972. After Walker's success in minor Formula Series, he was destined for glory at Lotus in the 1972 season. Despite his past successes, his talent would not transcend into F1. In the 1972 season, Walker was able to score not 1 point for Lotus. All of this meanwhile his Brazilian teammate, Emerson Fittipaldi, went on to crown himself world champion that year. Yes, it must be admitted that Walker did encounter a myriad of mechanical problems which did hinder him in his title chances. On the other hand, on occasions where his machinery didn't fail him, Walker was still miles off the pace. Jochen Rindt, 1970 F1 world champion, claimed that even a monkey would have won with his car. Therefore, if you perhaps go by the name Mahavir Raghunathan or are simply the new Mazepin who miraculously ended up in a top tier team, perform badly and he might as well beat this record. 2. Shortest distance raced in career. Ernest Loofe, 2 meters. Ernest Loofe was a German racing driver who made his first and only appearance at the German Grand Prix in 1953. Unfortunately for him, his first and only race would make him remembered for the wrong reasons. After having qualified 2 minutes off the pole sitter, he would proceed to travel the shortest distance before retiring. His car would stall only 2 meters after the race start, making his career the shortest ever in F1 as he would retire immediately. This record would be relatively easy to achieve even if you clearly aren't built for F1 or motorsport in general. You would have to be very rich though. Bribe one of the current F1 drivers to whom you physically resemble, preferably those who are not in the title fight, as they would be quite unwilling to accept your offer. Ask them if you could borrow their gear, stall the car after 2 meters, and retire. Simple as that. Try to make it 1 meter so you could boast that you've beaten the shortest distance ever raced by an F1 driver. 3. Only driver to DNQ, DNF and DSQ at a race. Hands higher. If you like the idea of not finishing races, not qualifying for them and getting disqualified from them, then this F1 record is for you. Hans Heyer was a German racing driver who raced for the newborn German team ATS in 1977. At the Hockenheim Grand Prix of 1977, with little experience in single-seaters and a slow vehicle, he did not qualify. He was the third reserve, meaning that he would get the chance to race if 3 drivers were to drop out. However, Heyer chose to start the race anyway. He sneaked out of the pits and joined the rest of the pack. Unfortunately for the German, his gearbox failed after 10 laps, and it was then when the stewards realized that Heyer was not supposed to have been competing. The stewards disqualified the German and subsequently banned him from Formula 1. He never attempted another race in a single-seat car. Up to this day, he stands as the only driver to be credited with a DNQ, did not qualify, DNF, did not finish, and DSQ, disqualified in the same race. Well, if you made it to F1 and you happen to be frustrated with your qualifying position in Q1, just secretly sneak into Q2. Maybe the stewards won't notice and will actually let you race the next on Sunday. You could break the record by illegally qualifying into a race. 4. Only driver to be disqualified for driving too slowly. Al Pease. If you think Mazepin is a slow driver, hold your horse. Al Pease was a British-Canadian racing driver. He participated in 3 Formula 1 World Championships Grand Prix, debuting in the 1967 season. At the 1969 Canadian Grand Prix, Al Pease was black flagged after a series of on-track incidents, the last involving Matra driver Jackie Stewart. In response, Matra owner Ken Tyrrell protested to the officials and had Pease disqualified. At the time, he had completed 22 laps in an uncompetitive car while the leaders had finished 46. This was the first time a driver was disqualified for driving too slowly in the entire history of F1. If you want to beat this record, you just have to find a way into an F1 Grand Prix. Once inside the car, just try to get lapped twice as many times and you might just set a new world record as the slowest driver ever. 5. Most penalties in a season and in one race. Pastor Maldonado. Do you like ignoring rules, ramming into other drivers and causing numerous safety cars? Our last driver on the list is the man to beat. Despite his evident raw speed, Maldonado's days in F1 did come at a high cost, especially in terms of car repairs. Pastor Maldonado beholds the record amount of penalties in one race as well as in an entire single season. At the 2015 Hungarian Grand Prix, Lord Pastor Maldonado was able to collect a staggering total of 3 penalties. The first came after he collided with Perez, the second penalty was for speeding in the pit lane, and finally to complete the hat-trick, one more for overtaking behind the safety car. In 2014, however, Maldonado held the greatest amount of penalties, 10 to be exact. If you consider yourself a very rebellious driver who thinks that following speed limits as well as racing rules for slow drivers, well, if you happen to be in F1, I suggest you try to aim for 5 penalties in a whole race, or if you like to be more consistent, try to aim for 15 penalties a season. Try to spread them out though, you don't want to look too suspicious. These are 5 records that you could easily break, hoping you eventually reach the pinnacle of motorsport. If there are other records that you think we've missed out, please let us know in the comment section below.